I had a certain schedule that I was doing for this course, as usual. And as usual, as a wizard, you have to be a little flexible when opportunities come up. Yes or yes? And so an opportunity came up. And I decided that I want to take this opportunity because a close friend of mine, who is an amazing person, wrote a new book. And her new book is called Happy for No Reason. And it just came out last week, and it's an instant bestseller. It went to #1 on Amazon right away. It debuted on #2 on the New York Times list, the advice list, which is by far, and I know this, the hardest list to get on. Selling well over 20,000 copies in its very first week. Good or good? And she's #2 on New York Times, #2 on Wall Street Journal as a debut. She's also another featured guest on the movie The Secret. And she is definitely one of the biggest selling authors in the history for women, because she has been the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. She has 6 best-selling books, including Chicken Soup for the Women's Soul and Chicken Soup for the Mother's Soul. And those New York Times bestseller lists have been on the list for 108 weeks. Good or good? Selling over 13 million copies in 33 languages. Good? And she's been for years on national radio and talk shows. Last week she appeared on the Today Show. I think it was last night she appeared, or the night before, on the Donnie Deutsch Show on The Big Idea. Next week she's on Montel Williams, co-hosting with Montel on one of the shows that he's doing on happiness. And she's eagerly awaiting her debut on Oprah. And since she was, she's a friend of mine, and since I saw her book skyrocket, and since she was just happened to be here in town doing something here last night, I said, please, can you come by and just spend a few minutes with us? And so she said yes, and she's here, and would you help me welcome Marcy Shimoff!
Inside of me, I will always be happy, happy for no reason, happy for no reason, happy for no reason. I'm so happy for no reason, happy for no reason. Thank you. Thank you.